All right, so the decision from the RBA today to hold rates at 4.1%. So what hope is there that that is the peak? Joining me now is the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, in the studio. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
How hopeful should mortgage holders be that this is the peak?
Well, it remains to be seen. And I think as the Reserve Bank Governor and the Board made clear in their statement today, they'll assess the developments in the economy as they unfold. That's what we would expect them to do. But I think really the main point that they made in the statement today was that the data that we've been getting for the last couple of weeks is consistent with getting on top of this inflation challenge at the same time as our labour market and our economy more broadly continues to grow. And that's really what we're trying to achieve here. Reserve Bank takes its decision independently, as you know. We've got our own responsibilities, and really the number one thing that we're focused on is rolling out this cost of living relief, because even after this welcome reprieve today, people are still under the pump.
Given what you said there, so for now the economic indicators are solid, especially unemployment, and clearly we're getting pretty close to the peak from what the RBA is saying now compared to previously. Are you the most confident you've been this year that we will avoid a recession?
Well, certainly the Treasury forecasts and the commentary from the Reserve Bank today, there is an expectation that the Australian economy will continue to grow, but much more slowly. And we need to be upfront about that. We have for some time expected the combination of substantial global economic uncertainty combined with higher interest rates and this inflation challenge, which is moderating but still significant. That is slowing our economy. We saw the front end of that in the March national accounts, and we'll see more of that in the months ahead.
You must feel a bit better, though, about avoiding a recession now compared to the past few months.
Well, our aspiration, our goal, is to get on top of this inflation challenge in a way that preserves as much as we can of the strength in our economy. And if you take a step back, even from today's decision, and you compare it to where we were, at election time last year, the labour market is incredibly strong, record jobs growth. We've got a surplus for the first time in 15 years. We've got inflation moderating. The quarterly peak was in March last year. And so on a range of fronts, we're making progress, partly but not solely as a consequence of our responsible economic management. We're making progress. We obviously need to make much more progress to try and get to a point where we're on top of this inflation challenge without crushing our economy.
You mentioned partly because of your economic management. If we look at what's happened with the RBA, it's clearly contractionary, hike after hike. Labor's fiscal policy, though, the budgets have been at best neutral. So is what you've done just not make the situation worse?
No, it's better than that. And if people are reluctant to take the government's word for that, I'd encourage people to look up what the Governor of the Reserve Bank said. And the Governor of the Reserve Bank said that our budget is taking the pressure off cost of living and inflation rather than adding to it, and our forecasts reflect that.
Did he actually say it would put downward pressure, though, on inflation?
He said, I don't have the quote on me here, but he said that the budget is taking pressure off inflation. And our forecasts show something like a 3/4 point improvement in inflation as a consequence of our cost of living package. And that's really our overriding goal here. In addition to preserving as strong as we can the labour market, getting on top of this inflation challenge, is rolling out this cost of living relief in a way that takes some of the edge off these pressures that people are still feeling without adding to inflation. The Reserve Bank Governor has said that that's his expectation of the budget, and that's the deliberate design of our budget.
For the future of the RBA decision, so they're going to have more of a focus now on employment, this reduced dual purpose, if you like. What do you think full employment is?
Well, first of all, I want to answer that question. But first of all, we shouldn't forget that full employment is already an objective of monetary policy under the Reserve Bank. If you go into the foyer of the Reserve Bank, there's a full employment inscription in the foyer of the Reserve Bank.
But it gains more prominence now, right?
Well, all we're saying as a consequence of the Reserve Bank review, on the advice of the reviewers, is that the Reserve Bank should weigh up full employment and price stability, and I think that's a good thing. But it largely reflects a bank which has been asked to factor in full employment for some time. Now, on the definition of full employment, there are two different things here that people need to understand. First of all, you need to make a technical assumption that feeds your forecast in the budget about what full employment is. That's called the NAIRU. The Treasury thinks that's 4.25%. They used to think it was closer to 5%. So that's the narrow...
This is where wages were supposed to get moving, and this is where they said they're not moving, lower, lower, lower.
It's basically a measure of where they think there is an inflationary impact of a labour market which is too
So is
tight.
4.25 still about right, do you think?
Well, that's the assumption that the Treasury uses and the Reserve Bank uses a similar assumption, but it's narrow, it's technical, and it's for the purposes of a forecast. There is a world of difference between that and what we're aiming to do when it comes to full employment in the economy. And what we're trying to do there is to make sure we can create a good, secure, well-paid job for everyone who wants one. And one of the achievements that we are most proud of is in the first year of the Albanese government, more jobs have been created than in the first year of any other government on record. Something like 500,000 jobs have been created since we've been in office. And what we've shown is the economy can create these jobs at the same time as inflation is moderating. We'd like it to be moderating faster, but we're making progress.
I guess when you look at 4.25 though, that would be hundreds of thousands of people becoming unemployed, and yet that would be situation achieved. That seems incongruous, doesn't it?
Well, people don't see it the way that you've described it. If you take the comments from the Deputy Governor about full employment and interest rates, the point that she was making was purely to reflect the nature of the forecast. And it comes back to what I was saying about the narrow technical definition of full employment, which is the NAIRU. Sorry to snow your viewers with technical expressions, but that's the assumption that the econocrats use. There's a difference between that technical assumption and what we're trying to do in the labour market. What we're trying to do in the labour market is to create good jobs for more people in more parts of the country.
A lot of talk about rent, and when Labor federally is asked about a rental freeze, it sort of parries it off to being a state issue. I mean, you got all the states together as in your government on energy to sort out a solution there. So why not on rent as well?
Well, we've found better ways to support people who are under pressure from higher rents. For example, one of the things I'm proudest of in the May budget was the biggest increase in rent assistance for 30 years. And that's in recognition of the pressure that people are under. But the biggest challenge here is supply. We want to build more houses. That's why it beggars belief that the Greens and the Coalition are blocking that in the Senate. We need to deal with the supply side issues in the housing market at the same time as we're giving people some relief from these higher rents with our increase to the Commonwealth Rent Assistance.